We introduce ourselves as Dineshle, meaning we are Navajos, meaning we are the people. We are jewelry makers, pottery makers, rugs, and I'm a flute maker now. I just picked it up, and it was always been in my heart of playing and hearing it. I fell into depression, and I had to move away from the reservation. And one day I was sitting outside on the porch, and my cousin brought out a flute. And all of a sudden, I heard this beautiful sound. It was just so beautiful, and it just touched me inside. And I didn't look. I was just looking down. I heard him play, and then afterwards, about a minute, and I looked at him, and he was playing a Native American flute. And ever since then, it just stuck with me. How I came about YellowKnife Navajo flutes was when I was working at the hospital in Fort Defiance. My best friend, his name was Sheldon Hosky, and he was a Marine, and he took his life. And so we used to work together, and we in the hospital we had radios, and so we would start. It's like if I wanted to get a hold of him, he would say, "Hey, looks twice, come in." We would make fun of each other. Like two barrels come in, and so one day I left my knife outside and I couldn't find it, and the next day it rained, and a couple days later we found it, and my knife was all yellow. And ever since then he started calling me, "Hey, YellowKnife, come in." So in honoring him, I call my flutes YellowKnife. When I started making flutes, I went through all the trials of different wood: softwood, hardwood, exotic wood. And I went back to, because all the other woods, they all have different sounds. Like a hardwood has like a really solid, I can't explain it, but it's like a hard, solid sound. Exotic wood, it has more, it fluctuates up and down, a different sound, like high and low. But cedar is the traditional wood for us back home. Being out here in Kentucky, the condensation builds up in those flutes. Like in a hardwood, it'll condensate and then the sound will go away. But with cedar, the condensation will build up, but it won't water out and it won't lose its voice. And it has that very nice, crispy and whipping that you can make with the flute. It took me about a year to actually make a flute sounding like a flute. It was a lot of trials and error that I had to go through. Sometimes I wanted to quit, but something just kept telling me, keep going, keep going. I only use a table saw and a router, because from the head to the toe, when you blow in and it comes out to the end, you want it a really nice, smooth, clean sound. I would bore it out, and then I would, it's two pieces put together, and I would glue it, and I would clamp it, and I'd leave it for about a day, and then after that, I take the clamps off, I drill my holes where I need it to be, and then I'll burn the holes where it needs to go, and then after that, I carve it out with a utility knife. I try to leave it traditional-wise, and then when I tune it, I use a hot iron. I heat up the iron, I burn my holes to tune it to where it needs to be. The length of the flute, all the notes have to be a certain size. Everything all has to come together. The holes have to be burned just right. The thickness of the flute has to be just right. So everything has to come together just to make it sound perfect. And it takes me I would say about a good week from start to finish to where I want it to be. So the small flute, the small bore, is a very high sound, like a bird sound. And as the diameter gets bigger, the lower the sound goes. And most of the time, I always make my flutes in the mid-range. So it's more like about 24 inches with a 7/8 bore. The traditional flutes are 5-hole, but we added the 6-hole to play patriotic songs like Star Spangled Banner, Taps, Amazing Grace. So that's why we add that 6-hole. But the traditional 5-hole is more, they call that more of a grandfather flute. So the grandfather flute is not tuned in any key. It's tuned to the maker's ear and whatever he's doing that day. Let's just say he was making a flute that he really liked, and he heard the water running, or maybe he heard the wind blowing, or he heard the birds talking, and he would tune that flute to what he was hearing. You'll know when you're making the flute and you're tuning it and you're playing it. You'll know, you can hear it. I mean, I know when you play for others, they hear the Native American flute, the sound. But for us, as being a flute maker, we go past that and we can actually feel the notes on our fingertips, and that's a really good flute. My journey right now is to play more of the grandfather flutes that are not tuned, because if it's not tuned and you make your own song, that's what makes it more beautiful. I think the flute is a very special instrument from the Creator and from Mother Earth, because we go out and we get the wood and we bring that wood to life and we pass it on and help others feel better. It's good medicine.